My husband left an $8 million inheritance, and I decided not to tell anyone. Thank God I did. On Monday, I asked my daughter-in-law to lend me $10. She replied, "Go get a job, you lazy old woman." I said 3 words that left her in shock. "I'm glad to have you here." Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Viola, and at 64 years old, I thought I understood what loneliness meant. I was wrong. Real loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by family who wishes you weren't there. 6 months ago, I buried my husband Lionel after 42 years of marriage. The funeral was beautiful, if you can call watching your life partner disappear into the ground beautiful. But what came after? That's when I learned what true pain feels like. The house feels enormous now. Every morning I wake up reaching for Lionel's warm body only to find cold sheets. The silence is deafening. No more of his terrible jokes over breakfast, no more gentle snoring that used to keep me awake and now I'd give anything to hear again. But the worst part isn't the grief. It's watching my own son treat me like I'm already dead. David used to call me every Sunday when Lionel was alive. We'd chat about the kids, his work, weekend plans. Now, 3 weeks can pass without a word from him. When he does call, it's brief, obligatory, like checking an item off his to-do list. "How are you holding up, Mom?" "I'm managing, sweetheart." "Good, good. Well, I should go. Isla needs help with dinner." Click. That's my daughter-in-law, Isla. 28 years old, blonde, beautiful. And she looks at me like I'm something unpleasant she stepped in. It wasn't always this way. When David first brought her home 5 years ago, she was sweet, even deferential. She'd ask about family recipes, compliment my garden, bring the kids over for weekend visits. That changed the day we came back from Lionel's funeral. I remember standing in my kitchen, still wearing my black dress, when David and Isla arrived with their 2 children, Emma, who's 7, and little James, who just turned 4. The kids ran to hug me, but Isla held back, whispering something to David that made his face turn serious. "Mom," David said, his voice careful, "we need to talk about your situation." Situation. Like widowhood was something I'd chosen. "What do you mean?" "Well," Isla stepped forward, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I've come to hate. "David and I are worried about you living here alone. This house is so big, and the expenses." I looked around my modest 2-bedroom home. Big? The whole place could fit in Isla's master bedroom twice. "I'm fine," I said. "Your father and we were careful with money." Isla and David exchanged a look I didn't understand then. Now I know exactly what it meant. "Mom," David said gently, "we know Dad didn't have much life insurance, and his pension. We're just concerned about your financial security," Isla added, though her tone suggested she was concerned about something else entirely. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, their visits became inspections. Isla would walk through my house, commenting on things that needed repair, suggesting I could downsize to something more manageable. She'd open my refrigerator and tisk about the food I was buying. "Viola, honey, you don't need to buy the expensive yogurt anymore. The store brand is just as good." She'd flip through my mail, shaking her head at utility bills. "These heating costs are outrageous. You should keep the house colder." David would nod along, agreeing with his wife while avoiding my eyes. My son, who used to defend me from his father's occasional grumpiness, now sided with a woman who treated me like a burden. The worst part was how they acted around the children. Emma and James used to run straight to me when they visited, excited to see Grandma. But I started noticing how Isla would pull them away when they asked me for things. "Grandma can't afford to buy you toys anymore, sweetie," she'd say in front of me, loud enough for me to hear. "She has to be very careful with her money now." Emma, bless her heart, would look confused. "But, Grandma, you always bought us toys before. That was when Grandpa was alive," Isla would explain, shooting me a meaningful look. "Things are different now. Different." That word started following me everywhere. 3 months after the funeral, I realized my car was making a strange noise. Nothing major, probably just needed a tune-up. But when I mentioned it to David, hoping he might know a good mechanic, Isla immediately jumped in. "A car repair? Viola, that could be hundreds of dollars. Maybe it's time to think about whether you really need a car at all." There's a nice bus route that goes right to the grocery store. A bus route. At 64, after driving for nearly 50 years, she wanted me to take the bus like some charity case. But I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. Lionel used to say I was too polite for my own good, that I let people walk over me because I didn't want to cause trouble. He was right. The breaking point came last Monday morning. I'd been feeling under the weather, just a cold. But at my age, these things hit harder. I was out of my blood pressure medication, and my arthritis pills were running low. The pharmacy was only a 10-minute drive away, but my car was making that noise again, and I was nervous about driving it. I called David. No answer. I called again an hour later, straight to voicemail. Finally, I swallowed my pride and called Isla directly. Hi, Isla. It's Viola. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you might be able to give me a ride to the pharmacy. I'm not feeling well, and my car— Oh, Viola, she sighed, like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. Today is really not good. I have yoga, then lunch with the girls, and then I promised Emma I'd take her shopping for school clothes. It would only take a few minutes. Look, can't you just call an Uber or something? An Uber. For a $10 prescription pickup, she wanted me to spend $20 on an Uber. I don't have the Uber app on my phone. Well, then I guess you'll have to figure something else out. Maybe David can help you later. But David didn't call back that day. Or the next. By Wednesday, I was feeling worse. The cold had settled in my chest, and I was almost out of my medications. I counted the cash in my wallet. $37. Not much, but enough for the prescriptions and maybe a small bottle of cough syrup. That's when I made the mistake that would change everything. I called Isla again. Isla, I'm really sorry to ask this, but could I borrow $10? Just until David gets paid on Friday. I need to pick up my prescriptions, and I'm a little short. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're asking me for money? Just $10. I'll pay you back. Viola. Her voice turned ice cold. I think it's time you faced reality. You're a grown woman. If you need money, go get a job. Stop calling here every time you have a problem. My heart started pounding. Isla, No, I'm serious. This whole helpless widow act is getting old. You want money? Go work for it. McDonald's is always hiring. Maybe try being useful for once instead of sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. The words hit me like physical blows. Helpless widow act, feeling sorry for yourself. Go work, you lazy old woman, she continued, her voice rising. Stop expecting everyone else to take care of you. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone, feeling something crack inside my chest. This wasn't just about $10. This was about respect. This was about family. This was about the fact that the woman my son married thought I was nothing more than a burden to be tolerated. You're going to regret this, I said quietly. Excuse me? My voice was calm, steady, even though my hands were shaking. You're going to regret this. Are you threatening me? No, Isla. I'm not threatening you. I'm simply telling you that you're going to regret treating me this way. I hung up before she could respond. For a long moment, I stood there in my quiet kitchen, listening to my heart pound. Then I walked to my bedroom, to the closet where Lionel's clothes still hung, and I reached behind his old suits to touch the small wall safe he'd installed years ago. Inside that safe were documents that would change everything. Documents that proved Isla had made the biggest mistake of her life. But not yet. Not today. Today, I would let her think she'd won. After I hung up on Isla, I sat in Lionel's old recliner and let the memories wash over me. 42 years of marriage, and I was still discovering things about the man I thought I knew completely. It was 3 weeks before he died that Lionel finally told me everything. He'd been in the hospital for his final round of chemotherapy, the treatments that we both knew weren't working anymore. The doctors had started using words like comfort care and making arrangements. We both understood what that meant, even if we couldn't say it out loud. I was sitting beside his bed, reading him the sports section like I did every morning, when he suddenly grabbed my hand. Viola, honey, we need to talk about something important. I set down the newspaper and looked at him. Even sick, even thin and pale from the chemo, Lionel's eyes were still sharp, still intelligent. What is it, sweetheart? There are things you don't know about our finances, things I never told you because I wanted you to be surprised if something happened to me. My heart skipped. Lionel, what are you talking about? He squeezed my hand tighter. Promise me you won't tell anyone what I'm about to tell you. Not David, not Isla, not anyone. Not until you're sure you can trust them completely. You're scaring me. Promise me, Viola. I promise. He took a shaky breath. I've been investing our money for 40 years. Not big risks, nothing crazy. But I've been very, very careful with it. And very, very lucky. I frowned. I knew we had some savings, maybe $20,000 or $30,000. We lived modestly, drove used cars, shopped sales. What kind of investing? Index funds mostly. Some blue-chip stocks. I started with just $50 a month back in 1982. Every month. $50. Then, when I got promoted, I increased it to $100. Then, $200. You never noticed because I set it up to come out before our paychecks hit our checking account. I was starting to understand. How much, Lionel? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, barely above a whisper, $8 million. The room spun. What? $8.2 million as of last month. It's all in your name now. Has been for years. The life insurance, that's just a small piece. This is our real legacy. I couldn't breathe. $8 million. My mind couldn't even process that number. But Lionel, why didn't you tell me? All these years we've been so careful about money, worrying about bills, because I wanted us to live normally. I wanted us to appreciate what we had, not get caught up in having more, and because, he paused, choosing his words carefully, because I've seen what money does to families. I've seen how it changes people. David might not. But what about Isla? What about people we don't even know yet? What about David's kids when they grow up? Money has a way of bringing out the worst in people, Viola. It makes them think they're entitled to things that aren't theirs. I thought about that conversation now, sitting in Lionel's chair. He'd been so wise, so careful. He'd made me promise to wait, to watch, to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing. Test them, he'd said on his last day home. See who loves Viola the woman and who just loves what they think you can give them. The test was over. Isla had failed spectacularly. Over the next few days, I watched David and Isla's behavior with new eyes. They came by on Saturday, ostensibly to check on me, but really to continue their campaign of making me feel helpless. Isla walked straight to my thermostat. Viola, it's 72 degrees in here. That's way too warm. You're wasting money on heating bills. She turned it down to 68 without asking. David poked around in my refrigerator. Mom, you've got food going bad in here. You're buying too much for one person. I know how much food I need, David. But look at this yogurt. It expires next week. And this milk. I'll use it before it expires. Isla sighed dramatically. This is exactly what we're talking about, Viola. You're not thinking clearly about these things anymore. Not thinking clearly. At 64. Because I bought a week's worth of groceries. Maybe, Isla continued, it would be better if we helped you with your shopping. Made you a list of what you actually need. A list. Like I was a child who couldn't be trusted to buy my own food. That's very kind, I said carefully. But I've been shopping for myself for nearly 50 years. That was when you had Lionel to help you use everything up, David said. Now it's just you. Just me. Those words stung more than they should have. As they prepared to leave, Isla made her final move. Oh, Viola, I've been thinking about what you said on the phone the other day. About needing money. My stomach tightened. Yes? Well, David and I talked about it. And we think maybe it would be good for you to have some purpose, some structure in your life. What do you mean? David stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Mom, there's a senior center downtown that has a job placement program. Nothing too strenuous, just part-time work to help you. Supplement your income. Supplement my income. I almost laughed. What kind of work? I asked. Isla's smile was perfectly sweet and perfectly poisonous. Oh, cleaning services, meal prep, companion care for other elderly people. Things that would suit your skill set. Other elderly people. I was 64, not 90. You want me to clean houses? It's honest work, Isla said, her tone suggesting that what I'd been doing with my life for the past 42 years wasn't, and it would help you feel more independent, more confident. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed for, the person I'd loved unconditionally his entire life. David, do you think I should clean houses? He couldn't meet my eyes. I think I think Isla has a point about having purpose. Purpose, as if raising him, supporting his father, managing our household, volunteering at church, caring for my own elderly mother until she died, as if none of that had been purpose enough. I'll think about it, I said. After they left, I sat back down in Lionel's chair and pulled out the folder he'd given me before he died. Bank statements, investment accounts, detailed records of 40 years of careful, patient wealth building. The most recent statement showed a balance of $8,247,332. $8 million that my son's wife thought I should clean toilets to earn. I thought about Lionel's words again. See who loves Viola the woman, and who just loves what they think you can give them. The answer was becoming crystal clear. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the financial advisor Lionel had worked with for decades, a man named Robert Chen who had helped grow our modest investments into this fortune. Mrs. Morrison, Robert's voice was warm, familiar. How are you holding up? I'm well, Robert. I think it's time we talked about some changes. Of course. What did you have in mind? I want to make some moves, quietly, and I want to start looking at real estate. Real estate? Are you thinking of downsizing? I smiled, thinking of Isla's constant suggestions about my too-big house. Actually, I'm thinking of upgrading. The second call was to my sister Margaret, who lived in Phoenix. Margaret was the only person who knew about Lionel's investments, the only family member he'd trusted completely. Viola, how are you, honey? I'm ready, Maggie. Ready for what? Ready to see what kind of people my son and his wife really are. Margaret was quiet for a moment. And? Let's just say Lionel's instincts were correct. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud of me. I'm about to get my life back. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Excitement. For too long, I'd been letting other people define who I was, what I was worth, what I was capable of, but I wasn't the helpless widow they thought I was. I was a woman with $8 million and nothing left to lose. 2 weeks after the cleaning house suggestion, Isla decided to take her campaign to a whole new level. She called it a family meeting, but what it really was an intervention designed to prove I was losing my mind. It started on a Thursday morning when David called me, his voice unusually formal. Mom, Isla and I would like you to come over for dinner Sunday. We need to discuss some important family matters. What kind of matters? Just things we've been concerned about. Your well-being, your future. We want to make sure you're okay. The way he said well-being made my skin crawl, like I was a problem that needed solving. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I drove my supposedly unreliable car to David and Isla's pristine suburban home, noting how the noise had mysteriously disappeared after I'd taken it to my mechanic and paid for a simple belt replacement. $68, less than what Isla probably spent on her weekly manicure. When I knocked, Isla answered the door wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was bright and artificial, like the flowers in her perfectly arranged entryway. Viola, come in, come in. Can I take your coat? She hung my old wool coat next to her designer jackets, and I couldn't help but notice the contrast. Everything in Isla's world was new, expensive, perfect. Even her children's toys were organized in matching bins, nothing out of place. David emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Hey, Mom, how was the drive? Fine. The car's running perfectly now. Good? Good. But he didn't ask what had been wrong or how much it cost to fix. The David I raised would have asked. We sat down in their living room, and I immediately felt like I was in the defendant's chair. David and Isla positioned themselves on the couch across from me, united front and all. The children were nowhere to be seen. Where are Emma and James? I asked. They're at Isla's mother's house, David said. We thought this conversation should be just us adults. Adults, as if I might not qualify. Isla leaned forward, her expression serious but concerned, like a social worker about to deliver bad news. Viola, we've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day. About your financial situation. What about it? Well, she continued, we're worried that you might not be thinking as clearly about money as you used to. It's completely normal for people your age. People my age? David jumped in, trying to soften his wife's words. Mom, What Isla means is that managing finances can become overwhelming when you're dealing with grief and living alone for the first time. I've been managing money just fine for 42 years. But that was with Dad's help, Isla said, her tone patient, like she was explaining something to a child. Now it's all on you, and we've noticed some concerning patterns. Patterns. I felt my jaw clench. What patterns? Isla pulled out a small notebook. Apparently, she'd been taking notes on my life. Well, for instance, last week when you called asking for money for prescriptions, a responsible person would have budgeted for medical expenses. I had the money. I just didn't want to drive my car when it was making noise. But instead of solving the car problem, you asked us for cash. That shows poor problem-solving skills. Poor problem-solving skills. I was 64 years old, not 14. And then there's your grocery shopping, she continued, flipping through her notes. David noticed you're buying too much food, letting things expire. That suggests you're not processing quantities correctly anymore. I bought one extra container of yogurt. It's not just the yogurt, Mom, David said, and hearing him agree with her felt like a knife in my chest. It's a pattern of miscalculations about my own grocery needs. Isla was just getting started. We're also concerned about your decision-making around the house. You're keeping the temperature too high, leaving lights on, making choices that suggest you're not fully considering the financial implications. I keep my house at 72 degrees because I'm comfortable at 72 degrees. But Viola, that's wasteful. When you're on a fixed income, every dollar matters. Fixed income. She said it like I was on welfare. We think, David said, glancing at his wife for support, it might be helpful for you to have some assistance with these decisions, just until you get back on your feet. What kind of assistance? Isla's smile was particularly bright. Well, I've been doing some research, and there are wonderful services for seniors who need help with financial planning and daily decision-making. Seniors who need help. I was starting to understand where this was going. You mean like a caregiver? Not a caregiver exactly, she said quickly. More like a life management service. Someone who could help you create budgets, make shopping lists, even help you organize your bills so you don't miss payments. I've never missed a payment in my life. Not yet, she said gently. But grief affects people in different ways, and sometimes the effects don't show up right away. David nodded earnestly. We just want to make sure you're protected, Mom. That you don't make any big mistakes while you're still adjusting to life without Dad. Big mistakes, like buying an extra yogurt. What kinds of mistakes are you worried about? Isla exchanged a look with David, then pulled out another piece of paper. Well, for instance, we're concerned about you living in that house alone. It's a lot of space for one person, and the maintenance costs. My house is paid off. Yes, but there are still property taxes, utilities, upkeep. We've calculated that you could save at least $800 a month by moving to a nice senior community. A senior community, at 64. These places are wonderful, she continued enthusiastically. They handle all the maintenance, they provide meals, they have activities. You'd have so much less to worry about. I like worrying about my own life. David leaned forward. Mom, we're just trying to help. We can see you're struggling. I'm not struggling, but you called asking for money. $10, David. I asked for $10 one time. Isla's voice took on that patronizing tone again. Viola, it's not about the amount. It's about the pattern. First, it's $10 for prescriptions, then it might be help with a utility bill, then maybe you fall behind on property taxes. I am not falling behind on anything. Not yet, she said, but we want to prevent that from happening. I stared at them both, realizing what was actually happening here. This wasn't concern. This was a takeover. They were trying to convince me, and possibly themselves, that I was incompetent so they could step in and manage my life. Have you already looked at these senior communities? I asked. Isla brightened. Actually, yes. There's a lovely place called Sunset Manor about 20 minutes from here. We took a tour last week. You toured a nursing home for me without asking me? It's not a nursing home, David said quickly. It's independent living with support services. We just wanted to have options ready, Isla added. We made an appointment for you to visit next week, just to see what you think. They had made an appointment, for me. Without asking me, I stood up slowly, my hands shaking with anger. Let me understand this correctly. You think I'm incompetent to manage my own money, my own house, my own groceries. You want me to move to a senior facility and have strangers help me make decisions about my own life. Mom, that's not... And you've already started making arrangements without consulting me. Isla's mask slipped just a little. Viola, you're being dramatic. We're trying to help you. Help me with what exactly? With accepting reality, she said, her voice sharper now. You're an elderly widow with limited resources. These are the kinds of decisions elderly widows have to make. Elderly widow with limited resources. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised to be kind, thoughtful, independent. David, do you agree with your wife? He couldn't meet my eyes. I think we all want what's best for you. And you think what's best for me is to give up my independence? I think what's best for you is to be realistic about your situation. My situation. As if being widowed automatically made me incapable of rational thought. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? Isla called after me. I turned back to look at them both, sitting there on their expensive couch in their perfect house, so sure they knew what was best for me. I'm going home, I said. To my house that's too big for me, where I'll set the temperature to whatever I want and buy as much yogurt as I please. Viola, you're overreacting. No, Isla, I'm reacting exactly appropriately to being treated like I'm senile. As I reached for the door handle, I heard her say something that made my blood freeze. This is exactly what we're talking about, David. She can't even have a rational conversation about her future anymore. We might need to consider other options. Other options. I walked to my car in the drizzling rain, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my keys. Other options. What did that mean? Legal guardianship? Having me declared incompetent? For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt genuine fear. But as I drove home, the fear transformed into something else entirely. Cold, calculated fury. They thought I was a helpless old woman with no options. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The dinner invitation came exactly 1 week after their intervention. David's voice on the phone was carefully neutral, but I could hear Isla coaching him in the background. Mom, we'd love to have you over for dinner Friday night. The kids have been asking about you. That was a lie. If Emma and James had been asking about me, they would have called themselves. They always did before. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just family dinner. Isla's making pot roast. Pot roast. My pot roast recipe. The one I'd taught her when she first married David and actually pretended to care about family traditions. I almost said no. Every instinct told me this was another ambush. But I needed to see how far they were willing to take this charade, and I missed my grandchildren desperately. What time? 6:30. And Mom? Maybe dress nicely. We're having a few other people over too. Other people. My stomach dropped. Who? Just some friends. People who care about you. I hung up, knowing this was going to be worse than I thought. Friday evening, I chose my outfit carefully. A navy blue dress that Lionel had always loved, pearl earrings that had been my mother's, and my wedding ring. I wanted to look like the competent, dignified woman I was, not the doddering fool they were trying to paint me as. David and Isla's house was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Through the windows, I could see more people than usual moving around inside. My heart began to race. Isla answered the door wearing a black cocktail dress that was far too fancy for a family dinner. Her smile was brilliant and cold. Viola, you look lovely. Come in, come in. The living room was full of people I barely recognized. A middle-aged woman in a business suit stood near the fireplace. A man with gray hair and kind eyes sat on the couch, a leather portfolio on his lap. David hovered near the kitchen, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. And in the corner, barely visible, sat Emma and James, staring at tablets, clearly told to stay quiet while the adults handled important business. Viola, Isla's voice had that professional cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. I'd like you to meet some people who are here to help us tonight. Help us. Not help me. Help us. The woman in the business suit stepped forward with an aggressive smile. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Catherine Walsh from Senior Life Solutions. David and Isla have told me so much about you. Senior Life Solutions. I'd never heard of them, but the name alone made me want to run. The man with the portfolio stood up. And I'm Dr. Robert Henley. I'm a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in helping families navigate difficult transitions. A psychiatrist. They'd brought a psychiatrist to dinner. I looked around the room, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. This wasn't a dinner. This was an intervention. A formal, orchestrated attempt to convince me I was mentally incompetent. Please, sit down. Catherine gestured to a chair that had been positioned facing everyone else, like a defendant's chair. I remained standing. I think there's been some misunderstanding. I was invited to dinner with my family. Oh, we'll eat later, Isla said brightly. But first, we thought it would be good to have a conversation about your future, with some professional guidance. Dr. Henley opened his portfolio. Mrs. Morrison, your son and daughter-in-law have expressed some concerns about your ability to live independently. They're worried about your safety and your decision-making capacity. My decision-making capacity? Catherine stepped in smoothly. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Many people your age experience some cognitive decline after the loss of a spouse. It's perfectly normal. Normal. There was that word again. What exactly do you think is wrong with my cognition? Dr. Henley consulted his notes. Well, I understand you've been having difficulty managing your finances, making poor judgments about household expenses, and showing signs of confusion about basic daily tasks. I stared at David, who was studying his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. David, is that what you told them? He finally looked up. His face flushed. Mom, we're just worried. Answer the question. Is that what you told them? Isla stepped in before he could answer. Viola, please, sit down. You're getting agitated, and that's exactly what we're concerned about. I'm not agitated. I'm angry. There's a difference. Catherine made a note on her clipboard. Actually made a note, like my anger was a symptom to be documented. Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Henley's voice was gentle, professional, patronizing. I'd like to ask you a few simple questions, just to get a baseline assessment of your current mental state. My current mental state is that I'm furious at being ambushed in my son's living room by strangers who think I'm senile. Can you tell me what year it is? I stared at him. Are you serious? Just humor me. What year is it? It's 2024. The president is Joe Biden. We're in Denver, Colorado, and I am not suffering from dementia. Isla made a little sound of frustration. See? This is what we mean. She gets defensive about simple questions. I get defensive about being treated like I'm incompetent. Dr. Henley tried again. Mrs. Morrison, can you tell me how much money you have in your checking account? Now we were getting to it. Why? Because your family is concerned that you don't have a clear understanding of your financial situation. I looked around the room at these vultures circling around what they thought was a helpless old woman. Catherine was taking notes. Dr. Henley was watching me like a specimen under a microscope. Isla was practically vibrating with anticipation. And David, my son, my baby, the child I'd loved and protected and sacrificed for, was letting it happen. My financial situation is none of your business, I said quietly. But it is our business, Isla jumped in, because when you can't take care of yourself anymore, it becomes David's responsibility, our responsibility. When I can't take care of myself, Viola, you called me asking for $10. You can't afford to fix your car. You're struggling to buy groceries. These are signs that you need help. Catherine nodded sympathetically. Senior Life Solutions specializes in helping families transition their loved ones into appropriate care settings. We've found a lovely community that would be perfect for you. The same nursing home you toured without my permission? It's not a nursing home, David said desperately. It's assisted living. You'd have your own apartment, but with support services. Support services like having someone else control my money? Dr. Henley leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, do you understand why your family is concerned about your living alone? Because they think I'm incompetent. And do you think their concerns might be valid? I looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd never met me, who knew nothing about my life except what David and Isla had told him, was asking me to agree that I was mentally incompetent. No, I said simply. I don't. Catherine sighed. Mrs. Morrison, denial is very common in these situations, but the fact that you can't see the problems your family is describing might itself be a symptom of cognitive decline. Catch-22. If I agreed I was incompetent, I was incompetent. If I disagreed, that was proof I was incompetent. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Isla's eyes lit up. Well, we've looked into the legal options. Legal options. David finally found his voice. Mom, in Colorado, if someone is unable to care for themselves, their family can petition for guardianship. The room went dead silent. Even Emma looked up from her tablet. Guardianship. They were talking about having me declared legally incompetent. You want to take away my legal rights? We want to protect you, Isla said, but her eyes were cold as ice. From making decisions that could hurt you. I stood up slowly, my purse clutched in my hands. I think I understand now. Mom, please. No, David. I understand perfectly. I looked around the room at all of them. You've decided I'm incompetent. You've found professionals to back up your decision. You've researched the legal process to take away my rights. You've picked out where you want me to live. We're trying to help you, Catherine said. No, you're trying to control me. There's a difference. I walked toward the door, but Isla's voice stopped me. Viola, if you walk out of here tonight, we'll have no choice but to move forward with the guardianship petition. For your own safety. I turned back to look at her. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. If you can't see reason, if you can't accept help, then we'll have to seek legal intervention. I looked at my son one last time. David, do you agree with this? He was crying now, but he nodded. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't watch you destroy yourself, destroy myself, by living in my own house and buying my own groceries. I walked to where Emma and James were sitting. My granddaughter looked up at me with confused, frightened eyes. Bye, Grandma, she whispered. Bye, sweetheart. As I headed for the door, I heard Dr. Henley say to David, You're doing the right thing. Sometimes families have to make hard decisions. Hard decisions. I drove home through blurry tears, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got to my house, my paid-off house that was supposedly too big for me, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the front door. They wanted to take away my legal rights. They wanted to put me in a home. They wanted to control my money, my decisions, my life, all because they thought I was a helpless widow with no resources and no options. I got out of the car and walked to my front door, keys steady in my hand for the first time in weeks. It was time they learned exactly how wrong they were. Inside my house, I went straight to the bedroom and opened Lionel's safe. The bank statements and investment portfolios seemed to glow in the lamplight. $8,247,000. I pulled out my phone and called Robert Chen. Robert, it's Viola Morrison. I need you to do something for me first thing Monday morning. Of course, Mrs. Morrison. What can I help you with? I want to buy a house. Something that will make a statement. What kind of statement? I smiled for the first time in weeks, the kind that shows people they picked the wrong woman to mess with. Monday morning, I was sitting in Robert Chen's office at 8:30 sharp, watching him scroll through luxury real estate listings on his computer screen. The sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown Denver office, illuminating the documents spread across his mahogany desk, documents that would change everything. Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, Robert said, looking up from his screen with concern in his eyes. Are you sure about this? $1 million home purchase is a significant decision, especially so soon after your husband's passing. I straightened my shoulders. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's look at what's available. The first property he showed me was a beautiful colonial in Cherry Hills Village, one of Denver's most prestigious neighborhoods. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, and a backyard that looked like something from a magazine. This one just came on the market, he said. It's in excellent condition, great schools nearby. Perfect, I interrupted. I'll take it. Don't you want to see it first? Robert, I trust your judgment. If you say it's perfect, it's perfect. He blinked. Mrs. Morrison, this is a cash purchase we're talking about. $1.2 million. I understand. And you want to close as quickly as possible? This week, if possible. He shook his head in amazement, but started making calls. By noon, I had bought a house that was 3 times the size of my current home, in a neighborhood where David and Isla could never afford to live. But the house was just the beginning. Over the next 3 days, I became a woman on a mission. I hired the best moving company in Denver to pack up my old house. Carefully, professionally, like I was moving precious artifacts instead of my modest belongings. I bought a brand new Mercedes sedan. Nothing flashy, just something reliable and elegant that would never make mysterious noises. I opened accounts at the most exclusive stores in Cherry Creek, the kind of places where they remember your name and bring you champagne while you shop. But most importantly, I hired Sarah Patterson, the best estate planning attorney in Colorado. Mrs. Morrison, Sarah said during our consultation, your family's attempt to pursue guardianship is legally questionable at best. You're clearly competent, you're managing your affairs well, and you haven't done anything that would suggest you need a guardian. But they're still going to try? People try all sorts of things when they think money is involved. The key is making sure they understand that their assumptions are completely wrong. Friday morning, I was putting the finishing touches on my new house when my doorbell rang. Through the beveled glass front door, I could see David's BMW in my circular driveway. I opened the door wearing a cream silk blouse and perfectly tailored slacks, every inch the successful woman I'd always been but had never been allowed to show. David stood on my doorstep with his mouth hanging open, staring at the marble foyer behind me, the crystal chandelier overhead, the sweeping staircase that curved up to the second floor. Mom? His voice was barely a whisper. Hello, David. Come in. He stepped inside like he was entering a museum, his eyes wide as he took in the elegant furnishings, the original artwork on the walls, the fresh flowers arranged in expensive vases. I don't understand. Would you like some coffee? I have a lovely Ethiopian blend. He followed me to the kitchen in a daze. The kitchen was a masterpiece of marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, with a breakfast nook that overlooked the manicured backyard. I poured coffee into bone china cups and gestured for him to sit at the granite island. Mom, I need you to explain this to me. How did you afford this house? I took a delicate sip of my coffee. Your father was a very wise man, David. What do you mean? He invested our money. For 40 years, he invested every spare dollar we had, very carefully, very conservatively, very successfully. David's face went pale. How much money are we talking about? Enough. Mom, I need a number. I set down my cup and looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 32 years old, handsome like his father, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before, a calculating look that reminded me uncomfortably of his wife. Why do you need a number, David? Because we. He struggled for words. Because we've been worried about you having enough money to live on. Have you? Yes. That's why we wanted you to move to assisted living. Why we thought you needed help managing your finances. We thought Dad didn't leave you much. Your father left me everything I could ever need. David ran his hands through his hair, looking like he was trying to solve a complex puzzle. But you asked Isla for $10. You said your car was making noise. You seemed like you were struggling. I asked Isla for $10 to see what kind of person she really was, and I learned exactly what I needed to know. The color drained completely from his face. What do you mean? I mean your wife showed me that she has no respect for me, no kindness, no basic human decency. When someone asks for $10, David, you give them $10. You don't humiliate them. You don't call them lazy. You don't tell them to go get a job. She was frustrated. She was cruel, and you let her be cruel. David stared into his coffee cup. Mom, if you had money all along, why didn't you just tell us? Because your father warned me not to. He said money changes people, brings out the worst in them. He wanted me to see who would love me for me, and who would only love what they thought I could give them. And I found out. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, a gardener was trimming the hedges, the sound of his shears a steady rhythm against the tension in the room. How much, Mom? David's voice was quiet now. How much money did Dad leave you? I studied his face, looking for any trace of the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he had nightmares, who used to make me Mother's Day cards with his own little hands, who used to tell me I was the best mom in the world. Enough to never need anything from anyone ever again. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw Isla's name on the screen. She's wondering where you are, isn't she? How did you know? Because I know exactly what this is about, David. You came here to see if I really have money, so you can report back to your wife. That's not true, isn't it? He couldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. Your father left me $8 million, I said quietly. David's coffee cup hit the marble counter with a sharp crack. Coffee splashed everywhere, but he didn't seem to notice. 8 million? 8.2, actually, as of last month. Jesus Christ, Mom. $8 million? Language, David. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked my new backyard. $8 million? And you let us think you were broke? I let you show me who you really were. We were trying to help you. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. He spun around, his face flushed with anger now. Do you have any idea what we've been through? The stress, the worry, the time we've spent trying to figure out how to take care of you, take care of me, or take care of my assets. That's not fair, isn't it? You brought a psychiatrist to your house, David. You talked about guardianship. You wanted to take away my legal rights. Because we thought you needed protection. From what? From living in my own house? From buying my own groceries? From keeping my thermostat at a comfortable temperature? He had no answer for that. I need to call Isla, he said finally. Of course you do. He stepped outside to make the call, but I could see him through the kitchen window, gesturing wildly as he spoke. When he came back inside, his expression was completely different. Calculating. Cold. Mom, we need to talk about this rationally. Do we? $8 million is a lot of money. More than you could ever spend. And you're not getting any younger. There it was. The real David. The one his wife had been nurturing all along. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to think about the family, about Emma and James's college funds, about setting up trusts, making sure the money is protected. Protected from what? From mistakes. From people who might try to take advantage of you. I almost laughed. People like who, David? I don't know. Scam artists, financial advisors who might not have your best interests at heart. But you and Isla would have my best interests at heart? Of course we would. We're family. Family. The word tasted bitter now. Let me ask you something, David. If I hadn't told you about the money, what would have happened next week? He looked confused. What do you mean? You were pursuing guardianship. What was the next step? He had the grace to look embarrassed. We had a court date scheduled for Tuesday, and if the judge had granted guardianship, we would have made sure you were safe and taken care of. In the assisted living facility you picked out for me? Yes. And who would have controlled my finances? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. We would have, he said finally. All of my finances? Including money you didn't know existed? He realized where this was going. Mom, that's not why we— Yes, it is, David. That's exactly why. You thought I was a helpless widow with limited resources, so you decided to take control of those limited resources. Now you find out the resources aren't so limited and suddenly you want to protect them. You're twisting this. Am I? My phone rang. Isla's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, David said. She wants to talk to you. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Mom, just talk to her. Why? Because she's my wife. Because she's the mother of your grandchildren. Because we're family. I answered the call on the third ring. Viola. Isla's voice was completely different from how she'd ever spoken to me before. Sweet, almost pleading. Viola, honey, David told me about your inheritance. That's wonderful news. Is it? Of course it is. We're so happy for you, and we're so sorry if we misunderstood your situation. Misunderstood? We thought you were struggling financially. We were just trying to help. By calling me a lazy old woman? Silence. Viola, I was having a bad day. I said things I didn't mean. But we're family, and family forgives each other, right? Family forgives each other. But family also doesn't try to steal each other's legal rights. Isla, what did you think would happen if the guardianship went through? I What do you mean? I mean, who did you think would control my money? We would have made sure you had everything you needed. All 8 million of it? Another silence. Viola, can we come over? Can we talk about this in person? I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I looked at David, who was watching me with desperate eyes. No, I said simply. I don't think we need to talk. But Viola, we're family. No, Isla, we're not. I hung up and turned off my phone. David stared at me like I'd slapped him. Mom, you can't just cut us off. Watch me. What about Emma and James? What about your grandchildren? That hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression steady. What about them? You're going to punish them for our mistakes? I'm not punishing anyone, David. I'm simply choosing not to be around people who treat me badly. We can change. Isla can apologize properly. We can make this right. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, and I felt something inside me finally break free. No, David, you can't make this right, because this isn't about money, and it isn't about misunderstandings. This is about respect. And once you've shown someone that you don't respect them, you can't take that back. So that's it? You're just going to cut us out of your life? I'm going to live my life. For the first time in decades, I'm going to live exactly the way I want to live. He headed for the door, then turned back one last time. This isn't over, Mom. Yes, David, it is. After he left, I sat in my beautiful new kitchen, surrounded by luxury I'd never allowed myself to enjoy, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months, peace. For the first time since Lionel died, I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months later, I was sitting in my sunroom reading the morning paper when I heard the familiar sound of children's laughter from the backyard next door. My new neighbors, the Hendersons, had 3 grandchildren who visited every weekend, and their joy reminded me of what family should sound like. Margaret had flown in from Phoenix for a visit, and she was curled up in the chair across from me, sipping coffee from one of my good china cups. You look happy, Viola, she said, studying my face. Really happy. I am happy. Any regrets? I thought about that question. Did I regret buying this house? No. Did I regret revealing the truth about my finances? No. Did I regret cutting ties with David and Isla? That one was more complicated. I miss Emma and James, I said honestly. I miss them terribly. Have you heard from them at all? Emma called me 3 weeks ago. Somehow she got my new number. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What did she say? She asked why I moved away without telling them. She said she missed me. And what did you tell her? I told her that sometimes adults have disagreements, and I needed some space to figure things out. But I also told her that I love her very much, and that will never change. Smart girl. What about David and Isla? I set down my coffee cup and sighed. They tried everything. First came the guilt trips. Phone calls about how I was abandoning my family. How Emma was crying for her grandmother. How they couldn't understand why I was being so cruel. Cruel. According to Isla, cutting off family members over money is the most selfish thing a person can do. Margaret snorted. Rich, coming from someone who tried to steal your legal rights. Then came the bribes. Suddenly they wanted to take me on vacation, invite me to dinner every week, include me in all their family activities. Isla even offered to cook my favorite meals and bring them over. Too little, too late. Exactly. Then came the lawyers. Margaret nearly choked on her coffee. Lawyers? They tried to challenge my competency again, claiming I was making irrational financial decisions. They pointed to this house purchase as evidence of diminished mental capacity. How did that go? I smiled, remembering the look on their attorney's face when Sarah Patterson presented my case. Sarah brought in my financial advisor, my doctor, even the real estate agent who sold me this house. Everyone testified that I was completely competent, making sound decisions and managing my affairs perfectly. The judge threw out their petition and warned them about harassment. Good for you. The final straw was when they showed up here unannounced last month, with Emma and James in tow. Margaret leaned forward. They used the children? They brought those babies to my door and told them to ask Grandma why she didn't love them anymore. The memory still made my chest tight with anger and pain. What did you do? I invited Emma and James inside, gave them cookies and milk, and explained that I loved them very much, but that their parents and I had some problems to work out. Then I walked outside and told David and Isla that if they ever used those children as weapons against me again, I would call the police. And David actually looked ashamed, but Isla, I shook my head. Isla looked at this house, looked at my car in the driveway, looked at my clothes, and I could see her calculating how much money she was losing by not having access to me. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Do you think David realizes what he's lost? I think David is starting to understand that his wife isn't the person he thought she was. But I also think he's in too deep to admit it. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Morrison? This is Janet Martinez from Cherry Hills Elementary. I'm Emma's teacher. My heart skipped. Is Emma all right? She's fine, but I'm calling because she asked me to. She wanted me to give you a message. What kind of message? She said to tell you that she's been writing you letters, but her mom won't let her mail them. She wanted you to know that she loves you and misses you, and she hopes you're happy in your new house. I felt tears prick my eyes. Did she really say that? She did. She also said to tell you that she's been saving her allowance money because she wants to buy you a present, but she doesn't know your address. I had to clear my throat before I could speak. Could you give her my address? Quietly? I think that would be fine. She's a very mature little girl, Mrs. Morrison. She understands more than her parents think she does. After I hung up, Margaret handed me a tissue. That little girl loves you. I know, and I love her, both of them. So what are you going to do about it? I thought about that question for the rest of the day. What was I going to do? I couldn't have a relationship with my grandchildren without dealing with their parents, but I also couldn't pretend that what David and Isla had done was acceptable. 3 days later, I had my answer. Emma's letter arrived in my mailbox, written in her careful second-grade handwriting on purple construction paper. Dear Grandma Viola, I hope you like your new house. I bet it's pretty. Mom says you don't want to see us anymore, but I don't think that's true. I think grown-ups just get confused sometimes. I love you very much. Can I visit you sometime? Love. Emma. P.S. James says hi and he misses your chocolate chip cookies. I sat in my kitchen holding that letter, and I knew what I had to do. I called Sarah Patterson. Sarah, I want to set up trust funds for my grandchildren. Full college tuition, plus money for graduate school if they want it. Maybe some money for their first homes when they're adults. That's a lovely gesture, Mrs. Morrison. How much are you thinking? $1 million each. That's very generous. Do you want the parents to have any control over these funds? Absolutely not. The money goes directly to Emma and James when they turn 25. Not to their parents, not for their parents to manage. Direct access only. I can set that up easily. And Sarah, I want to do one more thing. What's that? I want to send a letter to David and Isla, explaining exactly what they lost when they decided to treat me like I was incompetent. 2 weeks later, I hand-delivered a letter to David and Isla's house. I didn't go inside, didn't talk to them. I simply left it in their mailbox and drove away. The letter was simple. David and Isla, I have established trust funds for Emma and James that will pay for their college educations and provide them with financial security as adults. These funds are managed independently and cannot be touched by anyone except Emma and James themselves when they reach age 25. I hope you understand that these trusts represent what could have been shared as a family, if you had chosen to treat me with respect and kindness instead of cruelty and manipulation. I will always love my grandchildren, and they will always be welcome in my life when they are old enough to make their own choices about relationships. As for the two of you, I hope you find happiness. But I hope you also learn that family is not about what you can take from people. It's about what you give to them. Viola. Margaret was still visiting when David called that evening. Mom. His voice was different somehow. Quieter. I got your letter. Good. $2 million for the kids' education? They're good children. They deserve good futures. And nothing for us? What did you think you deserved, David? He was quiet for a long time. I think I understand now what we did to you. Do you? We treated you like you were incompetent. We tried to take control of your life. We were wrong. Yes, you were. Is there any way? Is there any chance you could forgive us? I looked out my window at the beautiful garden I'd had landscaped, the life I'd built for myself, the peace I'd found. David, I don't hate you. I don't hate Isla. But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. So there's no chance for us to be a family again? We're still family, David. We just can't be in each other's lives right now. What about Emma and James? They'll always be my grandchildren. When they're older, when they can make their own decisions about who they want in their lives, I'll be here. That could be years. I have time. After I hung up, Margaret poured us both a glass of wine. How do you feel? Free, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in my adult life, I'm completely free. Free to do what? I smiled, thinking of all the possibilities ahead of me. Free to travel without asking anyone's permission. Free to spend money on things that make me happy. Free to help people who actually appreciate help. Free to live my life exactly the way I choose. And if David and Isla come around, if they really change, then we'll see. But they'll have to prove it over time, not just with words. That night, after Margaret had gone to bed in one of my guest rooms, I sat on my back patio under the stars, thinking about Lionel. He'd been so wise to warn me about money and families. He'd known exactly what would happen. But he'd also given me something more valuable than $8 million. He'd given me the chance to discover who I really was when I didn't have to depend on anyone else's approval. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I was braver than I'd ever been allowed to be. And I was finally truly happy. 3 weeks later, Emma's second letter arrived. Dear Grandma Viola, Dad told me about the money for college. Thank you very much. Mom cried when she heard about it, but I think they were happy tears. I still want to visit you someday. Maybe when I'm bigger I can take a bus to your house. I love you. Emma P.S. I'm learning to make chocolate chip cookies in case you want some when I visit. I tucked the letter into my jewelry box next to Lionel's wedding ring and my mother's pearls, the things that mattered most. Someday, when Emma was old enough to understand, I would tell her the whole story. I would explain that sometimes people you love disappoint you, but that doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you love yourself enough to protect your own peace. And someday, maybe years from now, there might be healing. There might be reconciliation. There might be a way for us to be a family again. But if not, that was okay too. Because I had learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need anyone else's permission to be happy. I was enough, all by myself. The sun was setting over my beautiful garden, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I poured myself a glass of wine, put on some music that Lionel used to love, and danced alone in my kitchen. I was free, I was happy, and I was exactly where I belonged. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.